Hi, hello, ahlan wa sahlan, assalamu alaikum，欢迎大家。什么时候？我是孩子，我爸爸随我和我兄弟阿拉伯文，嗯，但是讲成不技术，我不技术学阿拉伯文，所以今天我不会说，但是以前我可能说。So, welcome, guys. Welcome to another Let's Talk. I've got coffee this time. Got my nails painted. That's right. Um, it's been a couple weeks, and a lot has happened. Last weekend, as of recording this, October 18th was the 5051 protest, or the No Kings protest, of which I attended in Columbus, and it was a pretty good turnout. At least 1,000 people showed up for that, which is great. Especially when it comes to Columbus, because Columbus is so incredibly spread out, um, that it can be a little difficult for people to get to places. It has a decent transit system, but it's not as robust as it could be, given again how spread out Columbus is. Columbus is so spread out, that it kind of feels like you do in fact need a vehicle to get anywhere. And also it was downtown at the State House in the downtown area of Columbus. Is very hard to find parking, sometimes, and very hard to navigate if you don't go there regularly, which I don't. So we ended up parking in a parking garage, by one of those companies that, you know, a city will outsource parking to. Metropolis, I think it is, and they charge way too much for parking for absolutely no fucking reason other than to make a profit. So, anyways, the protest was good. I was there with a political group that I'm with, Socialist Alternative. I'm not like the spokesperson or anything, just it's who I'm with, and we actually saw quite a bit of interest in our group and what we do and what we advocate for. Um, and it was interesting because within the protest, you could see, like, as the conservatives have, were chirping about, like, oh, the people at the protest seem to be like older white liberals only or whatever, and it's like, hey, like, the people who went out are the people who, you know are able to go out, and they showed out. Like, the lower estimate, nationwide, for the amount of protesters in attendance was 5 million, and the highest estimate was 7 million. People showed out. It's the people who can go. So a lot of them are retired, or a lot of them work Monday through Friday. So Saturday is perfect. Saturday was perfect for me. I work Monday through Friday, so I was able to go. And so, like, our group was getting plenty of attention from both younger leftists, but also older liberals, because they're Trump has really activated them, and they're now kind of like on this consciousness of, like, hey, things suck right now, and we have adult children now, and we need them to be able to afford healthcare. Like, our 20 our kid is 26 now. They got to be off our healthcare, right? Also, we still have, we utilize the ACA, so we need to protect that. Those kind of things. Like, or you have plenty that are on Medicaid getting cut 800 billion. You need to protect that. That gets people to go out. They're cutting Snap is about to end next month, okay, unless the Republicans come to the table and actually show that they are willing to protect Americans and not just play partisan politics, right? A lot of people are going to get hurt. I am going to mention something on that in a little bit, but I was also going to bring up like people like know that housing is unaffordable. Again, these the older folks, they have adult children now, and housing is unaffordable, and they know that like they would love for their kids to be able to move out, not just because they want their kid to have that independence and the ability to do so, but also because they want an empty nest now. All right, let's be real. But they know like it's hard to do because things are so unaffordable. Um, and so yeah, there was a good mix of liberals and leftists within the protests, at least in Columbus, and they were on both sides. They were giving our table a lot of attention, and realize like for those who were consider themselves just to be liberal, they realized that okay, yeah, I actually subscribe to what you're saying. Like we need healthcare, and it should be affordable to everyone. Universal healthcare it actually sounds great, right? Like they wouldn't have said that in 2008. you know um and Republicans are kind of just like, oh yeah, we just need to get rid of the ACA, or Obamacare as people know it as mostly. um Fun fact, when you say Obamacare, people are less likely to be have a positive feeling for it than when you say the Affordable Care Act. And you say Affordable Care Act and describe the same thing, more people are on board with that, and it's been that way for a while. The Republicans coined the term Obamacare and then worked to make it as bad as possible. Now, obviously, when the rollout happened, there were some issues, but those issues kind of got fixed so that the gears would turn a bit more smoothly. There's still issues with it. I just like it's a band-aid solution. There are provisions in the ACA that I think are good, like not being able to be denied coverage, because before we were in a environment in which healthcare companies could just straight up deny you, even like for the smallest the most minor um pre-existing condition. Like I have asthma, right? And if we didn't have the ACA, then any number of healthcare insurers could just deny me because I have a pre-existing condition. I'm a liability to their profit margins, is how it goes. And like also, it was way more expensive also before the ACA was passed. But Republicans want to go back to that. Would rather go back to that than to um, continue the subsidies to keep the cost lower for premiums. They would rather just nuke all of health of options on the table for healthcare and just go back to a system that was broken and people couldn't get healthcare. People like you have to understand that their their mentality is better to just let people die because they can't afford healthcare than to actually provide healthcare. Um, because again, it all goes back to that profit margin. But people are on board with that, and yeah, it was good. The thing though is that like there clearly is kind of an awakening to like a working class consciousness. People realizing we need to do this in order to better our country for everyone. Because like the one thing that um, the Republicans are doing right now is saying that they're making it seem as if the Democrats are only looking out for liberals and leftists when fighting for healthcare literally helps the Republicans' constituents as well, because Republican politicians don't give a shit about their constituents. They hurt them all the time. Their constituents too are on SNAP benefits and WIC, all right, like and Medicaid, but they they distract their constituents with like, oh, migrants this, trans people that, gay people this, black people that, right? And so, but yeah, just like there's this awakening to a consciousness that is good, and because we have that, is it's time to it's time for leadership to capitalize on that and get it pushing. What I think that the speeches that were presented in Columbus were good overall, but they missed a very crucial aspect, and that is giving out demands. There weren't any demands within the speeches, and you need to galvanize this movement and really capitalize on it as well by presenting demands. We want universal health care. We want universal child care. We want tuition free higher education. We want funding for lower education. That's whether that's early childhood education through K-12 needs to be funded. Um, what else? Just affordable housing, these all these things. You give those demands and say we want this and we are not budging. And if you are not going to give us this, then we will continue to mobilize. We will continue to show out, and we will eventually get to a point where we can have a general strike, and that general strike will really push our government to have to do something. It's happened before, and it can happen again. But again, that's why we got to capitalize and give out those demands so that the people that you are seeing show up, and people who are frustrated and angry and want to do something, give them those demands so that they know later down the road what they can advocate for to someone who is curious about the situation, right? That's what needs to happen. And that's the other thing. It's like the people who came to our table are very they're becoming more politically aware, if they weren't already, and if they were already, they become more so, and they realize like, hey, I need to get involved. I need to be politically active, and that's actually where I ended up, and that's why I ended up finding a group to join, um, and it's been good for me. So yeah. So a couple of things before we get to our main topic today. Um, I mentioned earlier that Snap is going to halt next month, like right before the holiday, meaning that people won't be able to purchase food for the holiday. It's going to be really bad, and people are rightly upset at this. Like they depend so much on that. And what I've been seeing on Twitter is a bunch of conservatives kind of just like laughing, like they're having a laugh at it because or not just because, but they're having a laugh at it, and they're basically just highlighting all these videos of Black Americans, on whether it be TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter, sharing their anger and frustration at Snap being coming to a halt next month. They're like getting off on this. The conservatives are, and it's really vile. They're like pointing at people um who have like who have multiple kids but still need Snap, right? They're looking at they're saying things like, oh, you just need to get a job then, or whatever. um and they're putting in all these stereotypes and racisms about Black Americans being on food stamps. And the thing is, and it's like I have tweeted out in response to some of these, like, hey, while you're being racist, this this halt to Snap and WIC are going to hurt white Americans just as much as black as it's going to hurt black Americans. So while your racist ass is having a laugh at people suffering because they look different than you and you don't like them, the people who do look like you are also seeing that, and they're going to attribute that to them because they're also on Snap. And and the um and one of the most important parts to remember is that the vast majority of people who are on Snap and Wick, for that matter, do indeed hold jobs. They are working. There's a reason why um, the term working poor exists, because who people are working and they're not getting paid a living wage. So they're stuck in this poverty because they're the job or sometimes jobs that they are working just barely covers rent and barely covers bills. And a lot of Americans are living at that line, and it's only growing, especially as the wealth gap gets bigger. All right, you got companies and CEOs raking in billions every year. Fuck, we're so close to having trillionaires in this day and age, yet there are Americans who who work multiple jobs and they are still called lazy, and they are laughed at because they're getting ready to lose their the supplemental nutrition. I can't remember the exact thing, but they're getting ready to lose SNAP, and you're laughing at them. They work multiple jobs. They're raising their kids. They're trying to feed their kids. You're laughing at them because of the color of their skin and your own prejudices. Like, that's insane to me, and it's disgusting. The conservative mouthpieces are getting more and more disgusting, and so and they're it's wild. It's wild. I mean, they're just like, oh, you should be only able to use Snap on these types of groceries. When it's like, hey, people who have Snap, they they buy the cheapest things because they can get more out of it. All right? If you like, they are fully on board with buying things that are nutritious and good for you and healthy. With that being said, those things are typically more expensive, and they're only getting more expensive. So I just it irritates me to like no ends that you can sit there and racistly laugh that people are getting ready to lose their snap, all the while it's about to hurt. It's just going to hurt everyone on it, and that they're whether they're white, black, whether they're Latino, whether they're Asian, Chinese Americans, Korean Americans, Japanese Americans, Thai Americans, Indian Americans, Sri Lankan Americans. Like, it's just gonna hurt anyone who's on it, and it's like you're just having a laugh because you don't like black people. That's so stupid. It's so stupid. And this is why racism hurts everybody, not just the group that is not just the group that is facing the racist actions, but it also hurts the people participating in the racism. Just so we clear. Now then, for the big after that diatribe. Now then, after that diatribe, we're ready to get into the bulk of or the main topic of today, which is fascist propaganda. And I wanted to do this specifically now rather than later, because it is very important for people to recognize everything that this administration is doing and pushing, everything that conservatives are pushing on Twitter. You see, if you know the history, you see the parallels. This administration is really close to that line. I think they've already passed the line. They've been doing the shit, and no one is the wiser, because the level of which we learn about fascism in school is so shallow, that you like, I know I don't recall learning much about, if anything, about the types of propaganda that fascists use, whether that be in Germany or Italy or Japan. So I wanted to just kind of bring up this idea. Um, so I have a couple of I'm using Wikipedia again. I have a couple of Wikipedia articles. One about propaganda in fascist Italy and Nazi Germany, as well as a couple of websites that kind of give examples of what they were showing, and then I can also kind of put that together with some of the things that the this administration, through their Twitter accounts, whether it be the White House, the State Department, or DHS, have been posting, because you can see the similarities. And there's one recently that came out that was an extra. It was like very, very blatant, and people started calling it out almost immediately. Ugh, I had to chug my coffee. It was lukewarm, and I don't like it. But anyways, so here we are. We are getting ready to start. Um, we're gonna read some of this. Um, some of and a lot of it is going to give pretty good background information. Actually, I read through some of this myself, as you can see. Um, and it yeah, I think it's important. So we're gonna go ahead and start reading. Papa Papa Granda, pomegranate. Propaganda in fascist, oh my god, in fascist Italy was used by the National Fascist Party in the years leading up to and during Benito Mussolini's leadership of the Kingdom of Italy during the fascist era, and was a crucial instrument for acquiring and maintaining power, and the implementation of fascist policies. Um, and so what we see now is this administration is doing an incredible amount of propaganda. Um, and so going forward into this reading, you'll start to kind of catch parallels, especially if you're on Twitter and you see it. You'll be like, oh my God, it's right there. They're not doing a good job at hiding it. The only thing that they're doing is tweaking it so that it's for the American gays. It's for the white nationalist American gays. Gaze, as in eyes, for them to see. Um, is for the white supremacist viewer. It's for um the Christian nationalist viewer, and so forth. All right, early fascist party. So from the formation of the Italian Faces of Combat, we don't need to read that. Fasci uh, Italiani di Combattimento. I don't speak Italian. In 1919, the fascists made heavy use of propaganda, including pageantry. This is important, and rhetoric, again, very important, to inspire the nation into the unity that would obey. Sorry, let me read that again. The fascists made heavy use of propaganda, including pageantry and rhetoric, to inspire the nation. Oh my God. Please go back. Oh, I went back too far. Stop. All right. Pageantry and rhetoric to inspire the nation into the unity that would obey. The party's main propaganda tool was Popolo d'Italia, the People of Italy, a pro-war political newspaper founded and directed by Benito Mussolini himself in 1914, which advocated for militarism, ICE, Italian irredentism, which is like isolationism, I believe it was. Bring it up. It should bring it up. Bring up the damn thing. Anyways, it is isolationism. We have some of that, although they're not this administration, and neither was fascist Italy isolationist in any point in time, but they talked like they were. And the Italian intervention in the First World War. During those years, fascist propaganda was mostly targeted at opposing the Italian Socialist Party. What do we see right now? What are they? What is the administration talking about currently? They're talking about resisting socialists. They're talking about the Democratic Party being taken over by socialists. Um, Chuck Schumer is scared of the socialist wing of his party. Socialists, all the protesters for the No King in the No Kings protest were are socialist extremists. They're terrorists. They're doing that kind of thing. Another parallel, just right off the bat. It's not hiding it. You have to just know the history. Um, the so the Socialist Party, the PSI, the largest political movement in the country, and the Italian fascists' main antagonist to power. Why? Because the the overall antithesis of fascism is socialism or communism. These are socialism and communism are very much for the betterment of everybody, where fascism is and I is fascism is a byproduct of capitalism, right? Capital owners, capital owners fear socialist revolution. Why? Because they then lose power. That power of the few gets lost and goes into the hand of the people. And when the people get the things that they uh, need and want, they want more of that. Once they get a little taste, that's why the Republicans fight tooth and nail against things like universal health care or maternity leave or universal child care. You start giving people these things, they're going to realize, oh, we can get these things, so let's advocate for getting more. You get more, you start hurting the pockets of capital owners. The PSI was accused of being a sock puppet of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and was often labeled as a Russian army. Um, this one kind of it's interesting because the political right as it currently stands, they'll either say they'll either call socialists and communists in America um, like they're in tied to China, mostly is what they use, but sometimes they still use Russia. Um, but now they're actually just blatantly like calling the socialists like Hamas sympathizers, Hamas terrorists, that kind of thing. Um, it is very much about creating fascism. Very much has to create this enemy out of the left because they have to fight. They're trying to fight tooth and nail from giving power to the people, right? It's a consolidated amount of power for the few, while the vast majority has to fall in line, and that's what they want, and that's what they're fighting to keep. Those sentiments were often shared by the Italian liberal establishment, which again, here we go, Italian liberal establishment. That's why whether politicians are on the right or on the center left, they are liberals, and this is the problem with liberalism. They're on both sides of that. They are liberal, and that establishment um, will fall in line with a fascist government. It happened in Germany. It happened in Italy, um, and that's why, like, when it comes to what's happening now, the left is pushing so hard for the Democrats to actually grow a spine, because we've seen it before. Like it's happened in history before. We as humanity have seen it happen, and we need to continue pushing um, the establishment Democrats to the left, so that we don't have just a two-party system that falls in line with fascist ideals. Um, anyways, so those sentiments were often shared by the Italian liberal establishment, which condemned fascist violence but was more afraid of a Bolshevik revolution. All right, that like both sides, the center left, and the right to the far right, are afraid of a people's revolution. That's all that is, and that again, that's why the Democrats have fought tooth and nail against things like universal health care, universal child care, tuition free education. They don't want any of that because it gives too much power to the people. In addition to attacking the Italian socialists through the pro-war fascist newspaper, the People of Italy, Mussolini often also attacked the liberal establishment of the Kingdom of Italy, which he regarded as responsible for the so-called mutilated victory, a term used to describe the Italian nationalist dissatisfaction on the territory rewards at the end of the Great War. So there's another great thing to bring up, is because the idea that the center left, being the liberal establishment that they are, um, they often will take positions that align with the liberals on the right, to advocate against very popular policies um, like universal health care, like affordable housing, like conditional amnesty, those types of things. And even though the center left is in agreement with the right, the liberals on the right, they still get attacked anyway. The center left liberals still get attacked. It doesn't matter. There, look what you have now. You have people on the right constantly calling people like Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, um, and Kamala Harris and Joe Biden as socialist, communist, authoritarian leaders. They don't care. They don't. It's not because that they are. It's because those are scary words. Those are scary things to be. So now you have the right throwing around socialism and communism as slurs, by for the most part. Um, so that's something to always keep in the back of your mind. Once Mussolini came to power, all propaganda efforts were grouped together under the press office. This is important because what just happened? Pete Hegseth, um, when it comes to the Pentagon, uh, was making he did two things, right? He was going to make a legacy media sign a kind of it was a document. I can't remember exactly what it was, what the term they used for it was, but it was going to severely restrict legacy media journalists from access to people around the Pentagon. That it was customary for journalists to go around the Pentagon, talk to multiple sources. It's been that way for a long time. Pete Hegseth came and said, "No, you are restricted. Your access is restricted, and you have to sign this document. Otherwise, you are not allowed in the Pentagon." And what we saw was a bunch of legacy media, like all legacy media, was like, "No, we're not doing this." It was basically, their little fuck you to Pete Hegseth, and I do respect what they did in terms of that. Um, and so now you have what we have, is right wing independent media. So the smaller right wing independent media, um, they signed on to that. So now they have access to the Pentagon. And so when I saw that on Twitter yesterday, I saw a few tweets on it. So the first one I saw, and this was out. This was without them sharing which independent media was going to be in there. I was like, okay, get ready for the most right wing independent media to come in and just push propaganda. They're just going to push propaganda, um, especially when you have like boats being bombed in the Caribbean right now, and Trump like fanning the flames of going into Venezuela to do regime change, right? So these right wing independent media are gonna go in. They're gonna push propaganda. And that's what I said. Then I saw another tweet, and this tweet actually showed who was going to go in. And actually, real quick, I have that bookmarked. Hold up, where is it? I'm gonna bring that up in a second. Here we go. Lindell TV, Tim Pool, Jack Posobiec, TPUSA, Gateway Pundit, The National Pulse, The Post Millennial, all right wing independent media. And so my reply was, I already fucking knew exactly what was gonna happen. And it was like my suspicions were confirmed. Get ready for the bootlicking, because that's all that's gonna come out of that. Continuing on, and propaganda efforts were slowly organized until a Ministry of Popular Culture was created in 1937. A special propaganda ministry was created in 1935 and claimed that its purpose was to tell the truth about fascism, refute the lies of its enemies, and clear up ambiguities that were only to be expected in so large and dynamic a movement. Personality of cult. I think this is important, and this is an important theme of the propaganda. Benito Mussolini was a central figure of Italian fascism and portrayed as such. I want to make a clear distinction here, though. Trump is an authoritarian. He's more of a Bonapartist. You don't have to know what that is. Um, you don't have to have a complete understanding of that. Just know that the difference is he's very much out for himself and uses the office to to grow his wealth. That's what he does. But what he is as an authoritarian also is a very good mouthpiece for the fascists that are around him. So yes, I mean, in by proximity, he is a fascist. He is the figurehead of fascism as we speak now, because you have someone like Stephen Miller, who's just an out and about Nazi, right? In Trump's ear, and Trump's going to do that thing. So he is the personality, right? The personality cult of Mussolini was in many respects the unifying force of the fascist regime by acting as a common denominator of various political groups and social classes in the National Fascist Party and Italian society. And so what we see is Trump being that personality, and all the prominent right wingers are behind him completely. All their right wing independent media behind him completely, and they're pushing and they're pushing and they're pushing. Again, up here, media, they're pushing it. They're pushing his agenda, and they're like, oh, it's so great. Look at him, he's so strong. There's something in here that I read, and I can't wait for it to come up. The personality cult of Mussolini helped reconcile Italian citizens with the fascist regimes, fascist regime, despite an annoyance with local officials. Sound familiar? A basic slogan in fascist Italy proclaimed that Mussolini was always right. This is kind of like the Trump is using common sense. He's bringing common sense back to America. Endless publicity revolved about Mussolini, with newspapers being instructed on exactly what to report about him. And now we have bootlickers who are able to get press passes. You got Newsmax. You got the Tim Pool, whatever hell his media company is called. I can't remember. TPUSA people, they have access to the White House, and they are pushing pushing a positive press about the terrible things that Trump um is the executive orders that he's passing, memorandums that he's passing. Anyways, he was generally portrayed in a macho manner. Think they think Trump is like the top dog. Remember they had the like picture of Trump as what's that what's that character? Um oh my god. Oh my god. The picture of Trump's head on like the most muscular body holding guns. I can't remember what character he was meant to be. But yeah, Trump is the most macho. He's the alpha dog, that kind of thing. Um, but so being portrayed in a macho manner, but he could also appear as a Renaissance man or as a military, family, or even common man. Think about the family and common man thing. They're like, oh, Trump is a family man. He has all these kids and all these grandkids, and he's just so great. He's not a politician. He is the common man. But no, he's definitely a politician. Um, like him being the president, him serving his first term made him into a politician. Just outright. He after that, that's what he's been. Um, and anyways, they've created this like mythos of him being a family man, the common person, the Renaissance man. He's this macho tough guy as well, and he leads the military, that kind of thing. That reflected his presentation as a universal man capable of all subjects. That's what they think of Trump. A light was left on his office long after he was asleep as part of a propaganda to present him as an insomniac because of his supposed nature of being driven to work. That's what they're doing with Trump. Trump is always working. He barely sleeps. He doesn't do anything except for work for the American people. That's the they are they that is the rationale of the current political right, making him seem to be this great man. He's the best of us all. That type of thing. He's working hard for you. It's all propaganda. Because no, he doesn't. They did that in his first term, and I mean, granted, as far as I know, he played more golf in his first term than he has now. But it's only been 10 months, by the way, and he's like hell bent on destroying the country this time around, going after political enemies. Mussolini, as a practitioner of various sports such as fencing, auto racing, skiing, horse riding, lion taming, and swimming, was promoted to create an image of a valiant and fearless hero. Mussolini's prestige as a hero aviator in the manner of Charles Lindbergh was especially important. As for Italian fascism, the aeroplane embodied qualities such as dynamism, energy, and courage. Mussolini himself oversaw the photographs that could appear and reject some, such as because he was not sufficiently prominent in a group. Okay. Mussolini's youthfulness when he took office became the youngest prime minister in Italian history, and his virile and energetic appearance were promoted. They often try to make Trump seem like he's younger than Biden is, so they make him feel like seem like you know he's cognitively with it because he's oh so young, right? The young age of 79. um in fascist symbolism, youth constituted a metaphor for action and vitality, which emphasized the nature of Italian fascism as a revolutionary ideology, in contrast to the stasis of liberal democracy. The official Italian fascist hymn, Youth, uh, Giovinezza Youth, linked the concepts of youth and rebirth of the nation and the reign of Mussolini into a symbolic unity. I think there's a good parallel here with what's going on now. Um, and like so, Germany. they got, the Nazi youth, the Hitler youth. I think it was. I think that's the term. Um, they did that. They pushed for that. Now we have a push for like getting people both into ICE and the military. So they're really going after young men heavily in these cases. With ICE, it's promising you student loan relief. It's promising you a $50,000 sign up bonus and up to like over $100,000 salary per year, right? And they're trying to get as many young people into it as possible. And with the military, again, they're trying to push certain people out and bring in these young white men into the military. This is what they're doing. The publicizing of Mussolini's birthday and illnesses were banned for journalists to give an impression of him not aging. That's a little bit of a difference. Other than the illness, they Trump has been covering his left hand. He wants no one to know about that. His birthday, though, is a big spectacle. That's a bit of a difference. The erratic aspect of this personality cult was also prominent since although Mussolini was portrayed as a respectable family man, state propaganda did meanwhile little to counter the idea that he had sexual magnetism to women and was promiscuous. Um, Sorry, I gotta read that again. The erratic aspect of this personality cult was also prominent, since although Mussolini was portrayed as a respectable family man, state propaganda did meanwhile little to counter the idea that he had sexual magnetism to women. Okay, and promiscuous, so that he was cheating. Like we know, Trump cheated on many of his wives. Legends of Mussolini defying death during the First World War and surviving assassination attempts were circulated to give the dictator a mythical and immortal aura. Ooh, look at that. That's a little spicy. We have that. Trump got shot in the ear and he doesn't shut up about it, right? Um, he brings it up whenever he gets the chance. Remember when like soon after it happened, he's like, I'm not gonna talk about it anymore. And what did he do? He kept talking about it. So now people bring it up because Charlie Kirk was assassinated, murdered in cold blood, and they bring up Trump almost being assassinated himself, right? And it's used to make Trump look good and to make and they use it try to make the left look violent and evil, even though that person who killed Charlie Kirk and the person who shot at Trump were not on the left, and also the man behind Trump was killed. A family lost a father and husband that day. But anywho, it was slated that Mussolini's body had been pierced by shrapnel, just as Saint Sebastian had been pierced by arrows. The difference being that Mussolini has survived his ordeal. He was also compared to Saint Francis of Assisi, who had, like Mussolini, suffered and sacrificed himself for others. Let's try to get. I'm going to try to get through this part a bit faster. Mr. Mussolini's humble origin was described with explicit parallels with the life of Christ. Oh my God, they make Trump look like a Christ-like figure. Why? Like, this is what I'm saying. When you start learning about stuff like this, you can't help but draw the parallels. When writing about Mussolini's blacksmith father and mother, fascist propaganda presented them symbolically as the Holy Family. They are what Mary and Joseph in relation to Christ. His hometown of Predapio was developed as a place of mass tourism and symbolic pilgrimage. The Vatican implied that heavenly powers were aware that Mussolini had saved Italy from Bolshevism and thus protected him. Pope Pius the ninth referred to him as the man of providence during the aftermath of the Lateran Treaty. Fascist state media described Mussolini's public speeches as sacramental meetings between Il Duce and the Italian people. Mussolini's melodramatic style of oratory was both pantomimic and liturgical, with exaggerated poses and hand movements and prominent variations in the pitch and tone of his voice. Mussolini intended his speeches to be faith-inspiring uh, theatrical performances and stated that the crowd does not have to know, it must believe. I think there's a good argument that Trump does a bit of that as well. In addition to being depicted as chosen by God, again, they make Trump seem like he was chosen by God. He has the mandate. The Italian fascist regime presented Mussolini himself having omnipotent or godlike characteristics, such as being able to work superhuman amounts, 14 to 16 hours daily, and never appearing tired. Fascist newspapers implied even that Mussolini had performed miracles, such as stopping the lava flow of Mount Etna in Sicily and invoking rain in the drought suffering Italian occupied Libya during his visit to the region in March 1937. A story of a deaf mute boy being cured after listening in a crowd to a speech of Mussolini was told in an elementary school manual. His overtly belligerent image did not prevent fascist newspapers from declaring he had done more for peace than anyone else. Who does that sound like? Who does that sound like? I stopped 8 wars. On the principle that Mussolini always did better than everyone else. Fascist propaganda proclaimed that he had improved the Italian people morally, materially, and spiritually. Mussolini was El Duce, and as such, he had been proclaimed in a song even before the seizure of power. The Italian invasion of Ethiopia in 1935 was presented as a revival of the Roman Empire, with Mussolini being portrayed as a Roman Emperor Augustus. He took a real big L there, huh? Big dub for the people of Ethiopia. Forever strong, baby. In order to improve the image of fascist Italy in North Africa and the Levant and to gain support from the Arabs, Mussolini had himself declared the protector of Islam during an official visit to Italian occupied Libya in 1937. He also got the Sword of Islam. Oh, see? Look at that. I didn't know that. Um, Trump Trump is also he's also doing something very similar to this, if not the same thing, by going to the Arab nations and claiming that he's bringing peace to the Middle East by getting a ceasefire between Israel and and Hamas, right? And so he also has this idea that like Middle East leaders like the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, who he's meeting with soon, they love him. You know, he is to their benefit. Like he has their back. That type of thing. Very similar to what's happening, but as we know, things didn't go like that, right? Mussolini was not uh, uh, in favor of actually working with them. He invaded. I mean, this was occupied Libya, and they pushed them out. Italian fascism, Italian fascism was among the most visible of the contemporary political movements that had emerged following World War One. It is emphasized it emphasized action and violence over talk and reason. We see this. Italian fascist, like I'm sorry, the boats off the Caribbean, bombing them. They're they claim they claim that there are drugs on those boats, but instead of apprehending the boats and actually checking, they're just bombing. They don't want to talk. Um, a lot of the times when there are ICE apprehensions, um, they don't take the time to look at anyone's papers. This is why they have arrested so many Americans in this process and held them as well. Sometimes for days, sometimes for weeks. They've held American citizens. They refuse to look at anyone's paper. They don't let anyone talk. You had the 19-year-old just last week in Chicago be apprehended by an ICE agent, and everyone's telling them that this man is an American citizen, right? They don't want to talk. They just want to use violence. Italian fascism was used to justify taking up notions and dropping them again. Economic issues were presented in a heroic and militaristic manner, with programs being termed the Battle of Wheat and the Battle of Lyra. Oh my God. The labor, I think it was the labor department. They did they had a tweet. How do I go back? They had a tweet. I need to search. Okay. The labor department had a tweet a little while ago about um Department of Labor, whatever. They had a tweet about this. Let's see if we can find it. They've got these. Was it this one? No. They have several. They have several. You know what? It wasn't one of these. It was they posted something recently, and so there was like it they called it Operation something. Oh wait, it's Project Firewall. Project Firewall is what they're calling it, to bring back American jobs, right? So yeah, there you go, another parallel. Military matters were also straightforwardly praised, with the aim of primacy on land, sea, and air. Disarmament was seen as impossible. War, conquest, and killing were praised as the essence of manhood. What did they do? First term, Trump, he didn't kill anybody, but he dropped a Moab on a air base, and people praised him. This is the most presidential he's ever been, for dropping a massive ass bomb. Um, but now you have people on the right praising him for going forward with the bombing of boats in the middle of the Caribbean, killing random fishermen. Like it's crazy. Praising him for sending seeking ice Gestapo on innocent people. A fascist encyclopedia proclaimed that nothing is ever won in history without bloodshed. They've killed people, by the way. ICE has. Um, Drawing upon older themes of suffering being necessary for greatness, which have been promoted during World War One. World War One was often cited in fascist propaganda, with many prominent Italian fascists displaying many medals from their conflict. To such figures such as uh, Gabriele de Annunzio, Annunzio, the return of peace meant only the return of the humdrum, but the ideal was still war. Themes that Italian fascism drew into its propaganda. We do see this now in America. By the way, they've renamed God, the they've gone back to the Department of War. I don't know why I'm blanking on what it was until recently, but they've gone back to that. They've gone back to they've gone back to making this, the United States Army being macho and manly again, right? Like that kind of thing. So they're drumming up that propaganda once again. Mussolini, shortly before the seizure of power, proclaimed violence as better than compromise and bargaining. Afterwards, there was a prolonged period during which the absence of military action did not prevent the government from many belligerent statements. Interviews appearing in foreign press in which Mussolini spoke of wanting peace had that portion censored out before they appeared in Italian newspapers. Wow. By the way, Trump likes to present himself as a peaceful dove, but then he turns around and says, "No, we're gonna bomb the hell out of these boats." Or, yeah, we're thinking of regime change in Venezuela. We're also thinking about bombing cartels in Mexico now. We're also, we'll also go. We'll like. There's potential that we'll go boots on the ground in Gaza and destroy Hamas that way. Like he is not pro peace. He dropped bombs on Iran. He's not pro peace, but he likes to present himself as such. But he also likes to present himself as the tough guy who will make the tough decisions. Right? It's the same thing. Italian victories in the Spanish Civil War in which the Royal Italian Army sent the Corpo Truppe Volontari, Corps of Volunteer Troops, to intervene on behalf of the Spanish nationalists, where Harold oh to intervene on behalf of the Spanish nationalists, were heralded in the fascist state media. The Italian invasion of Albania in 1939 was presented as a splendid act of aggression. So just so we're clear, again, Trump is thinking about going into Venezuela, and don't be surprised if they start pushing it as a good thing. Actually, in the run up to World War II, Mussolini's claim that he could field 8 million. I'm not sure what this is. I think this is funny. In the run up to World War II, Mussolini's claim that he could field 8 million was quickly exaggerated to 9 million and then to 12 million. I'm not exactly sure what this is referencing. However, I do find it to be funny because Trump does this all the time. He over exaggerates everything. The continually bellicose pose created an embarrassment with the outbreak of World War II, since failure to join the war would undermine the propaganda's desired effects. The Italians were called to be like Roman legionnaires, and their opponents were depicted as weak and enthralled by money. There's another parallel right there. The United Kingdom was denounced in particular, but both France and later the United States, when its sympathies were clearly toward the Allies, also came in for abuse. As we know, the United States did not want to get involved. They actually didn't care anything about what Germany or Italy were doing. They only joined the war because they were attacked by Japan, and actually there was a lot more agreement with Nazi Germany in America than people realize. Um, but again, we inevitably fought the Nazis. Yet we have people who celebrate Nazis. We have neo Nazis in this country now, and they're gaining power, and it's should be terrifying to everybody. Heroism was exaggerated. Violent acts committed by Italian fascists prior to the seizure of power in the Kingdom of Italy were glorified and legitimized. The March on Rome of 1922 was presented mythically as a bloody and heroic seizure of power. So one key aspect of fascism to always remember is the mythology that they create about themselves, and usually about themselves, or about their nation or race. They do this. You've got like Stephen Miller saying that the West has built everything. They are the builders. They are they are the superior culture. Their culture is what has breathed so much life into the West or whatever. Anyways, futurism was a useful part. God damn it, futurism. It says futurism, right? Yeah, was a useful part of the cultural scene because of its military elements. Fascist doctrine was first set forth in the manifesto of the Fasci of Combat. Years later, a different set of ideas were enumerated in the doctrine of fascism, which was purportedly written entirely by Benito Mussolini, although he wrote only the second part, and the first part was actually also written by Giovanni Gentili. Fascism's internal contradictions, such as changing official doctrines, were justified by Mussolini as a product of its nature, a doctrine of action, and a revolt against the conformity and alienation of the bourgeois society. This was part of an explicit rejection of liberal individualism, the punitive aspect of fascism containing an act not being omitted. Furthermore, fascism was meant to be a totalitarian or total experience, since it was impossible to a fascist only in politics, and it therefore overtly rejected liberalism's private and public spheres. Fascism was not a party, but a way of life. The corporatist state was offered as a unifying form of politics, as opposed to liberal democracy. Fascism and the state were identified, and everything was to be encompassed in the state. And that's what we're seeing now. Um, we're seeing now that Trump is trying to, he's blurring the lines between each separate part of our government, legislative, uh, yeah, legislative, God, judicial, and executive. He's blurring those lines, and he is, he's just he's blurring those lines and blending everything into one, so that he sits on top with no other body being able to check him. Work was presented as a social duty of every citizen because Italy was greater than any individual purpose. Beehives were presented as a model of industry and harmony. Furthermore, the unity would allow the entire nation to throw itself into support of military necessity. The sanctions imposed by the League of Nations while the fascist Italy invaded Ethiopia were used to unite the country against the aggression. Tariffs are being used now. Um, Empire, reviving the glorious. God damn it! All right, we're almost to that stuff. Reviving the glories of the Roman Empire and modern Italy was a common theme. This is also a common theme now that they're trying to, uh, the Westerners, the white Westerners built Rome, right? And we are the inheritors of that. We are the builders of the West, the greatest culture ever, and we have to revive. We have to have this revival of like manifest destiny is what we're seeing. Like the State Department post out, or maybe not the State Department, but one of those departments tweet out manifest destiny with the 1488. It's the wildest shit. That called for the control of Mare Nostrum, our sea, as the Mediterranean Sea was called in ancient Rome. France, the United Kingdom, and other powers were denounced as having kept Italy immersed. Concerted efforts were made to drum up enthusiasm for colonialism in the 1930s. I'm trying to think, do we? Oh, yeah, we do. Trump, remember when Trump was uh, uh, he posted that AI video of like a Riviera in Gaza, that type of thing, right? I mean, look where we are now. They're trying to do regime change in Venezuela. They've got warships like not far off from Venezuela in international waters, right? It's giving real imperialism vibes. Also, trying to go after Greenland. That's another example. Besides its symbolic aspects, the fasces had been carried by the lictors of ancient Rome as a representation of authority. April 21st, the anniversary of the founding of Rome, was proclaimed a fascist holiday that was intended to replace the Socialist Labor Day as a celebration of the Roman virtues of work and discipline. Roles in establishing Christianity as a universal religion was also exalted. Very much on the nose, by the way. That got loud. Sorry. That's very much on the nose. Um, in what's happening today, exalting Christianity, demonizing Islam. You had people just the other day. It was Diwali, and you had people demonizing Hinduism because we're a supposedly Christian nation, but also I think this past Labor Day, you had conservatives attacking the history of why we have a Labor Day. Um, Trump, signs an executive order for whatever reason about recognizing Columbus Day instead of Indigenous Peoples Day, which I mean, like you got people literally going hungry in this country, and that's your concern, making Columbus Day a thing. People don't even know why Columbus Day exists. Look it up. It's kind of stupid. We don't need it. Columbus never stepped foot on this continent. He got lost, people. Architecture was used to supplement the Roman revival by juxtaposing modern monuments with ancient buildings, such as the creation of the Via dell'Impero in the city of Rome, archaeological and propagandist projects involving the cleaning, isolation, also by deliberately destroying surrounding medieval buildings, and restoration of key monuments such as the Ada Pacis and the Mausoleum of Augustus, received strong support from the fascist regime. A major propaganda event was opening the Augustan exhibition of Romanitas on September 23rd, 1937, to celebrate the 2000th anniversary of the birth of Augustus. There, the symbolic connections between Caesarian leadership of Augustus and Mussolini's dictatorship was stressed. At the exhibition entrance was inscribed a quote from Mussolini: "Italians, you must ensure that the glories of the past are surpassed by the triumphs of the future." Rome thus constituted a point of reference in fascism's dream of building an aggressive and forward-looking Italy of the future. After the successful military campaign against Ethiopia and the subsequent proclamation of the Italian Empire, regime propaganda depicted fascism now even overshadowing its Roman past. Spazio Vitale, living space or vital space, was presented as needing conquest. It would strengthen the country by drawing off its surplus population and send landless peasants and unemployed to work the earth, buy Italian goods, and act as a garrison. Millions of Italians could live in Ethiopia, and exaggerated claims were made of its resources. That would amend the situation after World War I, in which fascists alleged that the Allies had cheated Italy of expansion into the former Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires. I don't know. Is there a tie-in? I feel like there might be, but maybe we're getting there. Fertility is a big one. Even while arguing that the population had to be drained off, propaganda urged greater fertility and derided men who failed to produce children and women whose Parisian fashions did not fit them for bearing children. Slogans urged maternity as a female form of patriotism. Mussolini instructed the heads of fascist women's organizations to go home and tell the women that they needed mini birth. To help the battle of birth, assistance had to be given to mothers and newborns, and the founding of an organization to do so was trumpeted. Contraception was decried as producing medical problems. What what did they just have a big press conference for? For the brainworm host himself to go up and say that men are losing sperm count and we need higher for. Anyways, so yeah, they just had this conference, like, was it last week, press conference last week for a thing about IVF, and they were talking about birth rates, and they've been talking about birth rates for the last like 10 years, like the and it's not just overall birth rate rates, but instead it's about the white birth rates. That is what they are concerned with, and it is very much a white nationalist way of thinking, a white supremacist way of thinking. They have this they call it the white genocide, that not enough white people are having babies, and so there's a browning of America. It's their great replacement theory, and it is nationalist and supremacist in thinking. So there you go, another tie-in. Mussolini also called for more rural Italy to increase birth. The battles to reclaim land and increase grain production Mussolini trumpeted have produced enough that Italy could hold 10 million more people. Civilization, a fascistic rhetoric portrayed the attack of Ethiopia as advancing a cause of civilization. Other European nations were called on to stand with Italy against alleged savage cannibals and slaveholders. I can't stress this enough. Like, this, we're seeing this especially in terms of Gaza. They're doing that. They're doing that with South America. They're Colombia and Venezuela are drug hubs, and we need to do something about them. Rhetoric was backed up by the Gold for the Fatherland initiative, which involved the donation of wedding rings and other forms of gold by Italian citizens in exchange for steel rings bearing the words "Gold for the Fatherland." Many Italians participated, and even Rachele Mussolini was known to have donated her wedding ring, and donated gold was then collected and used to fund the war effort. Anti-Ethiopia. During the war, propaganda was spread about exaggerated Ethiopian atrocities, both the abuse of prisoners and the misuse of Red Cross symbol for military installations. Economics. Economics. A series of calculated lies was propagated to win support for the Ethiopian venture by claiming that Italy was self-sufficient in food and enough oil had been stockpiled. Here we go. Bolshevism, socialism was resisted, particularly in the internationalist form. Socialist forces were denounced as a Russian army. Right now, we got socialist being called terrorists, extremists, Hamas extreme terrorists, jihadists. They're calling us. They're calling a socialist everything that every slur and everything that they can think of that's anti-Islam. They're calling socialist now. Um, so yeah, an editorialist afraid of the fascist violence would repulse Russian army. An editorial afraid that fascist violence would repulse women warned them that the killings were necessary to save Italy from the Bolshevist beast. Um, so they so one thing to note is that um, here is socialists being um, ostracized and called, some form of extreme, like traitorous, extremist. They're traitors to the nation, that kind of thing. And so it also breeds into violence against them, in which that we are seeing now, that with the Trump administration trying to proclaim that protesters that are expressing their discontent with this administration, they are violent, and there's violence in the streets. The cities are burning as a way to fuel violence by the state onto the citizenry. In his first speech as deputy, Mussolini proclaimed that no dealings were possible between communism and fascism, even while he proclaimed his willingness to work with other groups. The Spanish Civil War was presented as a crusade against communism. Um, Foreign culture, the influx of foreign culture was attacked. Americanism was the object of an organized propaganda campaign that attacked as a grease stain, which is spreading through the whole of European life. French and Russian novels, H.G. Wells' Outline of History, were also attacked as contaminating youth. British culture was used to show them as decadent. British literature was used to show them as decadent as the French. Their low birth rate was decried, and it was proclaimed that Italy had saved Britain and France during World War. And we do see that. We see the conservatives attacking um, cultures that are in the U.S. One great example of this is them attacking Minneapolis, that where you see a large Somali population. They're aggressively going after Minneapolis right now. Um, Honestly, I mean, they're just going after Muslims as a whole right now, whether it be here in America or in Germany or the UK. That's what they're doing. Italianization of street names and monuments in linguistically Slavic and German regions of Italy was mandated by legislation, and teachers instructing in languages other than Italian were persecuted. Oof. In 1926, new legislation was introduced decreeing the Italianization of Slavic surnames. Sports clubs were likewise forced to Italianize their names. AC Milan became Milano, and Internas- Internazionale was renamed Ambrosiana after the patron saint of Milan. Okay, there's a lot. I really need to get to the Nazi propaganda. Democracy and liberalism were pronounced moribund, with praise cited that fascism received everywhere. With praise cited that fascism received everywhere, and claims that the workers of North America wished they had a Mussolini. He demonstrated the inherent superiority of autocratic regimes to democracies by fixing problems to which liberalism had no answer. Trump capitalized on that. In 1934, Mussolini declared both democracy and liberalism dead. Bourgeois culture and morality were seen as integral parts of liberalism and were thus attacked. The bourgeois supposedly valued utilitarianism, materialism, well being, and maintaining the status quo. Instead, the fascist virtues of dynamism, courage, discipline, and self sacrifice. An anti bourgeois exhibition was opened on 29th November. November 29th, 1937, it denounced typical aspects of bourgeois mentality and ridiculed gestures and customs such as handshakes, suits, top hats, and afternoon tea, all to which fascism was to provide its own replacement, such as the Roman salute. God damn, dude, this shit is just too. It's too. I just the parallels are too visible. They're too visible. Um, Trump being the outsider. That's what that plays into, and he was going after it. He was going after any any wealthy person that was that bourgeois liberal or whatever, right? So now you have them um, praising him and giving him what he wants as a means to be safe from from persecution, right? I'm gonna move on. Um, I wanted to get to media. Authorities were allowed to confiscate newspapers on the grounds of publishing false information likely to incite class hatred or to bring the government into contempt. Meanwhile, pro fascist journalists were subsidized, and by 1926, government permission was needed to publish. I don't know if I brought this up earlier, but the other thing that Pete Hegseth was doing in terms of the Pentagon was making it so that anyone has to have prior authorization before speaking with the journalist. Now, we also know that um, the Trump administration attacks legacy media on the regular, calling them fake and hateful, right? Meanwhile, all the left independent media are getting have good grace with Trump, and if he because he likes them, they now have access to the White House, they have access to the Pentagon now, they have all that access, and they're going to play ball. Slogans were widely used and especially inscribed on walls. I don't know if we're seeing that yet. Well, we will. Posters. Many of Italy's leading graphics artists produced fascist posters during World War II to counter British pamphlets that proclaimed bombs. The curse of Garibaldi. Posters proclaimed that British victory meant worse than bombs. Barbarism would befall them. Americans were depicted as ready to plunder Italy's treasures. Ooh, we do see that, but um, because we just got the posters. We're about to look at some. The exhibition of Fashion Revolution was devised as propaganda to recount Italian history to the march on Rome to engage the visitors with fascist Italy emotionally. Marches, film, schools. Oh, hold on. Curriculums for schools were immediately overhauled for fascist purposes in a manner that the Nazis later admitted to imitating. And elementary schools soon spent 20% of their time teaching children to be good fascists. Teachers were removed if they did not conform, and textbooks were required to empathize the fascist soul. I'm so glad I came to this point because look at what's happening now when they're attacking public schools. You have you have canary missions out against carried out against educators. There's one recently that came out from the No Kings protest where a lady was like gesturing, being getting shot in the neck. And what we have now is they were trying to get her fired. The school was behind her, and they said no, we are not going to fire her. So as a result, they have been threatening this elementary school. Think about that. They're threatening an elementary school, but they've been going after teachers. They've been going after teachers uh for years now. Libs of TikTok, TPUSA was doing it. There's all these other independent canary missions to oust teachers, especially teachers who are in the queer community, a part of the queer community. They're trying to get them out. They're saying they're indoctrinating our children, and then they turn around and saying we want America first education. Think about that. Think about that. They are saying that the left is indoctrinating kids just by teaching them and letting kids be comfortable in their own skin. That's indoctrination. But an America first education, teaching that America is the best, is not indoctrination. Think about that. Please think about that because that's so important. It is so incredibly important, and their projection is just so vagrant. Youth groups, youth fascist and university fascist groups existed to channel talent to the fascist party, and for several years were the party's only source of new members. Students soon learned that they had to join the university groups to advance. Mussolini proclaimed their purpose to be inspiring the youth for power and conquest as fascists. Upon the age of 14, the groups uh, mainly sports for physical fitness, but at 14, military drills were added. They were given songs and commandments to mold their views. Everything from cultural institutes to camps was deployed to consolidate activities on fascism. So I will also think about this right now. The amount of conservatives that go on to like college campuses, but really the big one right now is TPUSA. After Charlie Kirk's assassination, TPUSA has been pushing and pushing for more chapters in various universities and various high schools, middle schools. They are pushing for it extra hard, especially the people like especially people who weren't even part of TPUSA. They are really, really driving home that they want these chapters in schools as a way of as a way of pushing their right wing ideals onto students, and they're not hiding it at all. So let's look at some of the propaganda that came out of fascist Italy. Um, so fascist these this is just a few. Right. So here's one. I don't want to accept cookies. I wish I could read it, but I can't. Okay, so this looks like it's Italy standing out on top apart from the other nations in Europe, and I think America as well. So there that goes to a point that came up. Oh, this is that the stronger together with the axe. Okay, I see that. I don't want to accept cookies. Stop. 1918. Oh, what is? See, I wish they had. Oh, here we go. So the first one is a comical satirical propaganda magazine, official organ of intelligent people. Founded in Rome in 1899, the issue for 1943 is replete with viciously racist and anti-American propaganda. An earlier era when fascism was not fully totalitarian. Okay, so that's this first one. It's showing race racist tropes, but I don't know which countries these are supposed to be of. Um, Fascism. Okay, so two, an early attempt to treat the various aspects of fascism, legal, economic, moral, sociological, on a serious scholarly plane. The book is signed by the author. Okay. Oh, that's a book. Okay. Um, let's see. The third one is an annual agenda produced by the Fascist Party of Farmers for farmers and merchants, and providing a broad array of information on agricultural products and machinery and advice on successful farming in general. mixed with the practical illustrations and uh, instructions is much fascist propaganda with opposite quotations from Mussolini. That's number three. Let's see. Number four, Institute Romano di Arti. Let's look at this. Okay, so that's a chain. Okay. Let's see. So, propaganda pamphlet making the case that Italy is a prisoner in the Mediterranean because it lacks control over Gibraltar and the Suez Canal and the Dardanelles. Number five, Boro Okanani. Kanani. So, okay, this looks like a war one. A colorful assortment of fascist propaganda pamphlets from the 1940s, seemingly oblivious to the reverses of Italy's forces abroad, intense aerial bombardment of its cities, and Mussolini's imminent fall from power. The materials gathered here attack the Atlantic Alliance, extol the leadership of the Duce, and praise the fighting qualities of Italian soldiers. The small pamphlet draws unrealistic distinctions between disastrous German situations. All right, additional exhibit items. So these are okay. All right, let's move on to Nazi Germany. We're going to try to make this quick. Propaganda was a tool of the Nazi Party in Germany from its earliest days to the end of the regime in 1945, at the end of World War II in Europe. As the party gained power, the scope and efficacy of its propaganda grew and permeated an increased amount of space in Germany and eventually beyond. Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf provided the groundwork for the party's later methodology, while the newspapers, the Volkscher, I'm not going to try to pronounce that, and later the Angriff served as the early practical foundations for later propaganda during the party's formative years. These were later followed by many media types, including books, posters, magazines, photos, art, films, and radio broadcasts, which took increasingly prominent roles as the party gained more power. These efforts promulgated Nazi ideology throughout German society, such as ideology, included promotion of Nazi policies and values at home, worldview beyond their borders, anti-Semitism, vilification of non-German peoples, and anti-Nazi organizations, eugenics, and eventually total war against the Allied nations. After Germany's subsequent surrender on 7th May 1945, the Allied governments banned all forms of Nazi propaganda and organized organizations which produced and disseminated such materials during the years of denazification. And there's an important piece of anti-Nazi propaganda that I will bring up after this. So Nazi propaganda promoted Nazi ideology by demonizing the enemies of the Nazi Party, notably Jews and communists, but also capitalist intellectuals. We do see this with the Trump administration. Um, Trump administration is going after Muslims right now. They're going after socialists. They're going after communists, and they're also demonizing intellectuals. They're going after education, calling your teachers anti-American, that kind of thing. It promoted the values asserted by the Nazis, including heroic death, um, Führerprinzip, leader principle, Volksgemeinschaft, people's community, Blut und Boden, blood and soil, and pride in the Germanic. Herrenvolk, okay, that's the master race. Propaganda was also used to maintain the cult of personality around Nazi leader Adolf Hitler and to promote campaigns for eugenics and the annexation of German-speaking areas after the outbreak of World War II. Nazi propaganda vilified Germany's enemies, notably the United Kingdom and Soviet Union and the United States, and in 1943 exhorted the population of total war. All right, so yeah, we see this kind of blood and soil, um, pride in the master race. We've seen that. We hear it from people like Stephen Miller, where he talks about the West, right? That's what he means. Eugenics. Again, that goes to the we need more like white babies. Cult of personality. Donald Trump is the cult of personality. He is the figurehead. Um, Mein Kampf was a propaganda tool, but I don't. I wanted to kind of skip that. Trump has not put out a book or anything. So let's go into the early Nazi Party. Hitler put these ideas into practice with the reestablishment of the Volksher uh, Pol- Polbechter, I don't know, a newspaper published by the Nazi Party from December 1920 onwards, whose circulation reached 26,175 in 1929. It was joined in 1927 by Joseph Goebbels, the Angriff, another unabashedly and crudely propagandistic paper. During that WWE that WWE style funeral for Charlie Kirk, you had Stephen Miller borrow from Joseph Goebbels' speeches, right? It's that type of thing. Also, look at this imagery right here. This is, the communists. Oh yeah, see, in 1937, anti-Bolshevik Nazi propaganda poster. The translated caption reads: "Bolshevism without a mask." Large anti-Bolshevik exhibitions of the NSDAP, Berlin, from November 6th to 19th of December 1937. So there you go, anti-communist. Like this, this communist is killing us. Like they're our enemy. That type of propaganda. During most of the Nazis' time in opposition, their means of propaganda remained limited. With little access to mass media, the party continued to rely heavily on Hitler and a few others speaking at public meetings until 1929. Once he finds that the Weimar government's use of pro-government radio propaganda slowed Nazi growth. This is why they are, like the current administration is going after legacy media so hard. In April 1930, Hitler appointed Goebbels head of the party propaganda. Goebbels, a former journalist and Nazi party officer in Berlin, soon proved his skills. Among his first success was the organization of riotous demonstrations that succeeded in having the American anti-war film All Quiet on the Western Front banned in Germany. I do want to say, in terms of like getting someone out to speak, Charlie Kirk was the biggest um, mouthpiece for the right um, that's that they've ever had, and so in losing him, they've kind of been pushing everyone out there, just kind of see who's going to get the most bites, right? Um, Stephen Miller really wasn't like Stephen Miller would do some things every once in a while, but he started really coming out of the woodwork. Um, he had a slip up, I think, as of recent, so he's been kind of more under the radar. But yeah, that's what we're seeing. They're trying to find who can garner the most attention right now. A major political and ideological cornerstone of the Nazi policy, this is while they're in power, was the unification of all ethnic Germans living outside the Reich's borders, like Austria and Czechoslovakia, under one greater Germany. In Mein Kampf, Hitler denounced the pain and misery of ethnic Germans outside of Germany and declared the dream of a common fatherland for which all Germans must fight. Throughout Mein Kampf, he pushed Germans worldwide to make the struggle for political power and independence their main focus, made official in the Ein ins Reich policy beginning in 1938. Um, on March 13th, 1933, a Ministry of Propaganda was established, with Goebbels as its minister. Its goals were to establish enemies in the public mind, the external enemies which had imposed the Treaty of Versailles on Germany, and internal enemies such as Jews, Romani, uh, homosexuals, Bolsheviks, and cultural trends, including degenerate art. I won't be surprised. Um, I won't be surprised if this administration tries to do something of this sort, um, given that they have so many independent right wing media that are ready to kiss ass all day long. Um, Whether they'll actually make it like a department of such, I don't know, but I think that they will absolutely utilize right wing media to really push more on the internal enemies. They've been really pushing it with Antifa, which is not even an organization, but an ideology. It's just anti-fascism, right? But that anti-fascism ideology is indeed a big threat to what they are trying to do, and that should spell it out for you right there. If you are labeling anti-fascists as the enemy, what does that make you in this equation? What does that make you? All right. For months prior to the beginning of World War II in 1939, German newspapers um, and leaders had carried out a national and international propaganda campaign accusing Polish authorities of organizing or tolerating violent ethnic cleansing and ethnic Germans living in Poland. Um, uh, on August 22nd, Hitler told his generals, "I will provide a propagandistic casus belli. It's casus belli. Its credibility doesn't matter. The victor will not be asked whether he told the truth." The main part of this propaganda campaign was the false flag operation Himmler, which was designed to create the appearance of Polish aggression against Germany in order to justify the invasion of Poland. And I'm just gotta reiterate the fact that the Trump administration is trying to paint protesters in these large cities as being violent and aggressive so that they have grounds to send in federal law enforcement to deal with it. They're sending in the National Guard to to deal with these cities that are on fire and these violent protesters. They're pushing it. They're pushing it, and there you go. Again, parallels. As you read this shit, you realize, oh my god, okay, this is kind of happening. The main part of this propaganda campaign was the false flag. I just read that. Research finds that the Nazis' use of radio propaganda helped it consolidate power and enroll more party members. And again, they don't. We have television now. We have television. We have Twitter. We have there's Truth Social out there. There's 4chan. There's all these things that oh, TikTok. TikTok's a big one. TikTok is a really good place in which they utilize. Charlie Kirk was really good at it. All right, so there are a variety of factors that increase the obedience of German soldiers in terms of following the Nazi orders were given to them regarding Jews. Omer Bartov, regarding Jews, Omer Bartov, a professor on subjects such as German studies and European history, mentioned in his book Hitler's Army, Soldiers, Nazis, and War in the Third Reich how German soldiers were told information that influenced their actions. Bartov mentioned that General uh, Joachim Lemons, I don't know, German. Limelson, a corps commander, explained to his German troops regarding their actions toward Jews. "We want to bring back peace, calm, and order to this land." Oh, why does everything I read in here sound so familiar to what we hear today? German leaders tried to make their soldiers believe that Jews were a threat to their society. We see that with immigrants. Immigrants are a threat to our society. Trans people are a threat to our society. Muslims are a threat to our society. Black people are a threat to our society. It's as clear as day. It's as clear as day. If people don't see it, then they're trying not to see it. Thus, German soldiers followed orders given to them and participated in the demonization and mass murder of Jews. In other words, German soldiers saw Jews as a group that was trying to infect and take over their homeland. I'm telling you, It's a direct parallel. Bartov's description of Nazi Germany explains the intense discipline and unity that the soldiers had, which played a role in their willingness to obey orders that were given to them. These feelings that German soldiers had towards Jews grew more and more as time went on, as the German leaders kept pushing further for Jews to get out of their land, because they wanted total annihilation of the Jews. Um, All right, so this is World War II. Until the conclusion of the Battle of Stalingrad on February 2nd, 1943, German propaganda emphasized the prowess of the German arms and the humanity German soldiers had shown to the peoples of the occupied territories. Pilots of the Allied bombing fleets were depicted as cowardly murderers, and Americans in particular as gangsters in the style of Al Capone. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. This current administration is calling all immigrants gangsters. They're calling all trans people terrorists. They're calling black people um, violent violent they're calling them violent. Like it's just uh it's just like so reminiscent of a time that we thought had passed and would never come back. At this time, the German propaganda sought to alienate Americans and British from each other, and both these Western nations from the Soviet Union. One of the primary sources of propaganda was the Wehrmacht, a daily radio broadcast from the high command of the uh, Wehrmacht, the OKW. Nazi victories lent themselves easily to propaganda broadcasts and were at this point difficult to mishandle. Satires on the defeated accounts of the satires on the defeated accounts of attacks and praise for the fallen all were useful for Nazis. Still, failures were not easily handled, even at this stage. For example, considerable embarrassment resulted when the Ark Royale proved to have survived an attack that German propaganda had hyped. Goebbels instructed Nazi propagandists to describe the invasion of the Soviet Union um, as the European crusade against Bolshevism, and the Nazis then formed different units of the Waffen SS consisting of many volunteers and conscripts. By the way, this Waffen thing, I think there was, oh god, how long ago was this? It was in the last decade that like there were some American service members. I can't remember in which branch of the military they served, but they had their own little group. It was like the Waffen something. I mean, that just goes to show you like how do we go from fighting Nazis to just like having people openly be Nazis within our society. It makes you think. I mean, like I know a bit of the history. Like America didn't really actually have anything against Nazi Germany. They just they just kind of found themselves um, fighting them. You know what I mean? Because they were partnered with Japan, which attacked America. But like America, like I said earlier, Americans kind of liked it, and there was growing sentiment for Nazi Germany within America, which is why you ended up having so much anti-Nazi propaganda at that time from the then Department of War, but um, also Adolf Hitler was actually a big fan of America. He kind of loved what America was doing with like segregation and whatnot. He was a big fan. Was instructed Nazi propagandists to describe the invasion of the Soviet Union. Oh, sorry, I read that. After Stalingrad, the main theme switched to Germany as the main defender of what they called Western European culture. Oh my God. Oh my God. Whew. We're hearing this again today. We're hearing it right here in America, baby. Stephen Miller, right here. Pete Hegseth, Donald Trump. They're all saying this. They're all saying to we gotta defend, our Western culture. Sometimes they put in the Europeans, sometimes they don't. Against the Bolshevist hordes, and we gotta protect culture against the, the uh, Islamo communists or whatever the hell they're trying to pin now. The introduction of the V1 and V2 Vengeance weapons was emphasized to convince Britons of the hopelessness of defeating Germany. On June 23rd, 1944, the Nazis permitted the Red Cross to visit the concentration camp. The concentration camp, Theresienstadt, to dispel rumors about the final solution, which was intended to kill all Jews. In reality, the Theresienstadt was a transit camp for Jews en route to extermination camps. In a sophisticated propaganda effort, fake shops and cafes were erected to imply that Jews lived in relative comfort. Uh, the guests enjoyed the preference of a child's opera written by Hans Krause. The hoax was so successful for the Nazis, they went on to make a propaganda film, Theresienstadt. The shooting of the film began February 26, 1944, directed by Kurt Geron. It was meant to show how well the Jews lived under the benevolent protection of Nazi Germany. I do feel like we're kind of getting to this point of like the administration is um as they put more immigrants into detention, which it has come out that the living situations inside the detention areas is abysmal, but they're trying to they're trying to they've tried to paint it as such as like, oh no, this is actually humane. They're being treated humanely. They're getting food. They're getting that, but it's like that's not actually what's happening. You know what I mean? And they're being deported very slowly. This is going to get more and more expensive until we inevitably reach this conclusion. We have to stop this before it reaches this conclusion. Um, Anti-Semitism during World War II. Anti-Semitism, wartime propaganda served a variety of purposes. It was hoped that people people in allied countries would be persuaded that Jews should be blamed for the war. The Nazis also wished to ensure that German people were aware of the extreme measures being carried out against the Jews on their behalf in order to incriminate them and thus guarantee their continued loyalty through fear by Nazi conjectured scenarios of supposed post-war Jewish reprisals, especially from 1942 onward. I'm hoping that this gets more into the Nazis portraying Jewish people as being violent criminals, because that happened, and it is very much we very much see the parallel with the Trump administration calling immigrants violent um, violence, committing violence. Yeah, they're portraying immigrants as committing mass violence, and therefore, we have to do this violent deportation process in order to keep you safe. So let's see if they get into that with this article. The announcement that Jews were being exterminated served as a group unification factor to preclude desertion and force the Germans to continue fighting. Germans were fed the knowledge that too many atrocities had been committed, especially against the Jews, to allow for an outstanding to be reached with the Allies. The use of anti-Semitism in wartime propaganda. This is a book. Nazi media. Oh, fuck. Nazi media vilified arch nemesis of Germany as Jewish Franklin D. Roosevelt, or in the case of Joseph Stalin and Winston Churchill, abject puppets of an international Jewish conspiracy intent on ruining Germany and Nazism. With this, I think you can draw a parallel between how right now the Republicans and conservative mouthpieces are um, basically vilifying, using Islam as the villain here, using like they're basically saying that the left, the coin that they were trying the term that they were trying to coin was Islamo communism, right? It was like, okay, you have all these Muslims moving in, and now everyone is, everyone that's not with us is is a Muslim socialist terrorist, and so therefore we need to do something about it, right? Problems and propaganda arose easily in this stage. Expectations of success were raised to high and too quickly, which require explanation if they were not fulfilled. And the blunted effects of success and the hushing of blunders and failures caused mistrust. They're actually, we are kind of seeing this part play out. The propaganda is not quite hitting as hard as the Trump administration wants it to, and there is some backlash. They're facing backlash, which is why they are going to continue to push farther to feed the base some red meat and trying to keep them servile and obedient. Um, but things aren't working out for people, and they're questioning why, right? Um, okay, let's see. Nazi and sympathizers published many propaganda books. Most of the beliefs that would become associated with the Nazis, such as the German nationalism, eugenics, and anti-Semitism, had been in circulation since the 19th century, and the Nazis seized on this body of existing work in their own publications. Notable is Hitler's Mein Kampf, detailing his beliefs. The book outlines major ideas that would later culminate in World War II. It is heavily influenced by Gustav Le Bon's 1895 The Crowded Study of Popular Mind, which theorized propaganda as a way to control the seemingly irrational behavior of crowds. Um, that is, oh my God, we see state departments doing this right now. Um, let's let's continue on from the books. There's a lot there, and I've been running this for quite some time, and I don't want it's already over 2 hours, so we're gonna keep going. Um, let's okay. So they have a thing on comics. Let's see. The Nazi-controlled government in Germany occupied France. Produced the Vika comic book series during World War II as a propaganda tool against the Allied forces. The Vika series, authored by Vincent Krasuski, represented Nazi influence and perspective in French society and included such titles as Vika contre les Sauvages, Secrets Anglais, I'm sorry, and Vika de l'oncle Sam, l'oncle Sam. Okay, that make I can get I get what that's saying. Um, Films. The Nazis produced many films to promote their ways, using the party's Department of Film for organizing film propaganda. An estimated 45 million people attended film screenings put on by the NSDAP. Um, Reich, uh, Reichsamtslater Carl Newman declared that the goal of the Department of Film was not directly political in nature, but was rather to influence the culture, education, entertainment of the general population. Um, September 22nd, 1933. The Department of Film was incorporated into the Chamber of Culture. The department controlled the licensing of every film prior to its production. Sometimes the government selected the actors for a film, financed the production partially or totally, and granted tax breaks to the producers. What other kind? They had fine art magazines. I'm wondering. Let's go to newspaper. Um, the Volkshire Beobachter People's Observer was the official daily newspaper of the NSDAP since December 1920. It disseminated Nazi ideology in the form of brief hyperboles directed against the weakness of parliamentarism, the evils of Jewry and Bolshevism, the national humiliation of the Versailles Treaty, and other such topics. It was joined in 1926 by Der Angriff, The Attack, a weekly and later daily paper founded by Joseph Goebbels. It was mainly dedicated to attacks against political opponents and Jews. One of its most striking features were vehemently anti-Semitic cartoons by Hans Schweitzer, but also engaged in the glorification of Nazi heroes such as Horst Wessel. The illustrator Beobachter was their weekly illustrated paper. Um, and so one thing that we should be on the lookout for is for this administration to create something like this. Um, Considering they're already using right wing media to push their agenda and push the notion of who our internal enemies are, um, being immigrants, being Muslims, being socialists, communists, the Democrats. They are and African Americans. They are broadening the scope of who the perceived enemy is, and they're most likely going to push harder, as it's only been 10 months. It's only been 10 months, and the push has been pretty hard now already. But the logical conclusion is for them to push harder and push more. So we'll see. After Hitler's rise to power in 1933, all the regular press came under complete Nazi editorial control. The policy of Gleichschaltung, uh, Gleichschaltung, I don't know, and short-lived propaganda newspapers were also established in the conquered territories during World War II. Alfred Rosenberg was a key member of the Nazi Party who gained control over the newspaper, which was openly praised by Hitler. However, Hitler was dissatisfied by Rosenberg's work and slandered Rosenberg behind his back, discrediting his work. By the way, um, I don't know how much you all would know about this, but currently there is consolidation of legacy medias. Um, so I think it is. I always get the two confused. Uh, the elders. I think Larry Elder is the father, and I think he just purchased like CBS, and there's talks of him possibly purchasing um more networks and could possibly be in control of like CNN. This is a very dangerous idea, and it needs to be resisted full throttle. Because if they get there, because Larry Elder is a conservative, he is friendly with this administration, and so this would be a very very bad thing to happen in our society. So they use photography. Nazis used photographers to document events and promote ideology. Photographers included Heinrich Hoffmann and Hugo Jaeger. Hoffmann worked in his father's photographic shop and as a photographer in Munich. Joined the Nazi Party. After Hitler took over the party in 1921, he named Hoffmann as his official photographer, a post he held for over a quarter century. A photograph taken by Hoffmann in Munich's place in 1914 shows a young Hitler among the crowds cheering the outbreak of World War One. It was used in Nazi propaganda. Hitler and Hoffmann became close friends. In fact, when Hitler became the ruler of Germany, Hoffmann was the only man authorized to take official photographs of him. Hoffmann's photographs were published as postage stamps, postcards, posters, and picture books. Following Hoffmann's suggestion, both he and Hitler received royalties from all uses of Hitler's image. That's crazy. Oh man. 9 photographs taken by Hoffmann reveal how Hitler rehearsed poses and his hand gestures. He asked Hoffmann to take pictures so that he could see how he looked while speaking. Hitler later asked these photographs to be destroyed, which Hoffmann did not follow through with. Hoffmann was forbidden from taking such candid photographs without Hitler's consent. This was an intentional propaganda effort to maintain the cult of personality around Adolf Hitler. Cult of personality. I think we read that earlier on anyway, but posters is really, really what I wanted to get into. I'm very upset it was this far down. Poster art was a mainstay in the Nazi propaganda effort aimed both at Germany itself and the occupied territories. It had several advantages. The visual effect being striking would reach the viewer easily. Posters were also, unlike other forms of propaganda, difficult to avoid. We have only one goal: victory at all cost. Is this one? Imagery frequently drew on heroic realism. Nazi youth and the SS were depicted monumentally with lightning posed to produce grandeur. In a symbolic nod to the military exploits of the Teutonic Knights in medieval times, Nazi propaganda posters depicted German soldiers as knights in shining armor defending the German nation in Europe from the supposed threat of Bolshevist Jewry. I need to stop for a moment and stress that um, the Department of was it? Oh no, I lost it. I lost it. So DHS recently posted this. The enemies are at the gates. Here's the night imagery. All right. The Nazis liked night and using nights in imagery, and people were calling this out. By the way, um, yeah. So here's one. People were calling this shit out because this is just blatant, um, a blatant call to this Nazi imagery, and it's wild that they just keep doing this. They don't have to put in a swastika for you to understand. The people who know it understand, and that's who they're trying to that's who they're trying to get the message to. Everyone else is just kind of like, I don't know what this means. You know what I mean? They just see it and it's like, that's weird. Why are they doing that? But the people who are tapped in, they know exactly what they're looking at. And that's why I find it so important to talk about these types of things, so that we have a better understanding of um, what this current administration is displaying openly, because there's a message behind it, but it's a message that the typical American is not supposed to understand, and that's what they're banking on. Parole der Volte Wall newspaper were published by were published by the Reichsminister of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda. First edition was distributed March 16th, 1936. Every week, an estimated 125,000 posters were administered to the public from 1936 to 43. Word of the Week's posters were politically skewed and meant to rally public opinion in support of the Nazi efforts. The posters set out to educate and unify German people before and especially during World War II. Posters were placed in train cars, buses, platforms, ticket windows, anywhere there was a dense traffic flow. Very few individuals at the time owned a car. Most biked, walked, or used public transportation daily. Exposure to the Word of the Week posters was high in German cities. The messages and Nazi ideologies stared stared out at the mass public for a week at a time. Tens of thousands of places German pedestrians were likely to pass in the course of a day. Jeffrey Herf, author of Jewish Enemy Nazi Propaganda During World War II and the Holocaust, described the poster campaign as a combination of newspaper editorial, political leaflet, political poster, and tabloid journalism. Hitler's personally appointed artist Hans Schweitzer, known as, I'm not going to try to pronounce that, with the task of translating Nazi ideology into images for the Wall newspaper. The posters were 100 centimeters high and 212 centimeters wide. The visual style of the posters was bold text and Nazi influenced colors. It was meant to capture the attention of the German passerby. The text was big so that several people could read it at the same time and from a distance of a few meters. Here's Hitler youth propaganda. Indoctrinations within the classroom. The majority of the posters were centered on Jews in the Allied countries of the United Kingdom, the United States, and the Soviet Union during the time period when anti-Semitic articles decreased in publication. Anti-Semitic rhetoric was amped up, and the word of the week posters. From 1941 to 1943, about 25% of the word of the week poster included an attack on Jews. Jews were depicted as enemies because of their supposed economic war, capitalism, and connection to the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. I'm going to read that again. Depicted as enemies because of their supposed economic war, capitalism, and connection to the Bolshevik Revolution. The Nazi regime fostered the idea that the Jews were the masterminds behind all oppositional political forces. Images often showed Jewish figures positioned behind or above symbols of economic and political influence. That is a really important thing to remember, because look at how Republicans and conservative mouthpieces talk about George Soros pulling the strings of socialism in America right now, and also how socialists understand that there is uh, in capitalism there is an economic war um, that demonizes and attacks the working poor, and the um, that demonizes and attacks the working poor and props up the wealthy capitalists, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Um, Oof, there's so much here. We know so much about this. Let's read a bit about the radio. Before Hitler came to power, he rarely used radio to connect with the public. When he did so, non-party newspapers were allowed to publish his speeches. This changed soon after he came to power in 1933. Hitler's speeches became widely broadcasted all over Germany, especially on the radio. It's itself introduced by the Ministry of Propaganda. They were shown in weekly newsreels and reprinted in large editions and books and pamphlets across Germany. Hitler's speeches became so significant to the Nazis that even restaurants and pubs were expected to have their radios on whenever he was delivering one. And in some cities, public speakers were used so passerby could hear them. Speakers were used. Sorry. The Nazis also sold cheap radios so that people could hear speeches at home. These were called the People's Receivers and were sold for 76 marks, while cheaper versions were sold for 35 marks. Furthermore, the types of stations and wavelengths that could be accessed and reached by radios were controlled by the ministry, allowing them to limit their radio capabilities to listening in on government announcements and propaganda. And again, I just wanted to note the Trump administration's war with legacy media, trying to get them unaccredited, and trying to pretty much eliminate um, their presence among news consumers. Recognize internal broadcasts. Recognizing the importance of radio in disseminating Nazi message, Goebbels approved a scheme whereby millions of cheap radio sets were subsidized by the government, and the radio as the eighth great power speech. In the radio as the eighth great power speech, Goebbels proclaimed, um, "It would not have been possible for us to take power or to use it in the ways we have without the radio. It is no exaggeration to say that the German Revolution, at least in the form it took, would have been impossible without the airplane and the radio. Radio reached the entire nation, regardless of class, standing, or religion. That was primarily the result of tight centralization, the strong reporting, and the up-to-date nature of the German radio. Above all, it is necessary to clearly centralize all radio activities, to place spiritual tasks ahead of technical ones, to provide a clear world view." By the start of the Second World War, over 70% of German households had one of these radios, which were deliberately limited in range in order to prevent loyal citizens from considering other viewpoints in foreign broadcasts. In private homes, however, people could easily turn off their radio when bored, and did so once the novelty of hearing the voice from a box wore off. That's really funny. External broadcasts, as well as the domestic broadcasts, the Nazi regime used radio to deliver its message to both occupied territories and enemy states. One of the main targets was the United Kingdom, to which William Joyce broadcast regularly, gaining the nickname Lord Ha Ha. Joyce first appeared on German radio on September 6, 1939, reading the news in English, but soon became noted for his often mischievous propaganda broadcast. Joyce was executed for treason in 1946. Um, I'm gonna wait. Speakers. All right, so I'm gonna stop there with that, and just kind of wanted to just have another little look. So we got this right, the knights. Um, I wanted to. So here, this is really. I think this is really important imagery. This idea of working the propaganda poster in support of a national welfare program reads: national health, national community, child protection, protection of mothers, care for travelers, and the tasks of the NS Welfare Service. Join now. You get those, but you have to join this. ICE. ICE is getting special services for just joining ICE. Again, that's the student loan relief. That's the high salary, the bonus. Um, they're getting a bunch of benefits as well, like healthcare. Um, so just there, think about that, but also just look at how the imagery is pushed. Here's one that I think this mid 1930 poster, the NSDAP, the Nazi Party, protects the people. Your fellow comrades need your advice and help, so join the local party organization. And I want you to pay attention to how it looks. How it looks. What you see. The 1935 poster promotes the Hitler Youth by stating, "Youth serves the Fuhrer. All 10-year-olds into the Hitler Youth." Let's see. This is a propaganda newspaper. This is a good one. Crowd sizes. Trump loves to use crowd sizes. Oh, here's one of him as a knight. Interesting. This is portraying Jewish individuals in an very anti-Semitic way. Here are some. Oh, okay. I think that's anti-communist. Women examining display at the Der Eagle Jew. Oh, the Eternal Jew exhibition in the Reichstag building in November. Oh, see, I had no idea what that was. Okay, so this is School from 1938, anti-Semitic children book The Poisonous Mushroom. The boy is drawing a nose on the chalkboard, and the caption reads, Jewish nose. Oh my God. Yeah, like just blatant. It's just blatant. But I want you to take note at how it looks, because when it comes to the propaganda that this current admin is pushing, um, we have a very similar look. Defend the homeland. This is the type of shit that the Germans were using. They would say the fatherland, right? Um, and it's the way that it's the art style that I think is very important. I hate this. If you know about this story, then you know why I hate it so much. Here's another one. All right, join ICE now. This, I mean, I don't know what else to say. Where is it? I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to say. It's the same type of message. It's the same type of message as these. And they're just doing it brazenly. Brazenly doing it while also putting mugshots of people on their page. And that is wild to me. Um, Department of Labor is also very, very guilty of doing this as well. This kind of thing. I mean, how does this not just like look so similar to this? You know what I mean? The only thing that's not there is like the iconography of that damn bird. It's it is there and it's blatant. As long as you know, as long as you know what they were doing, it's there. Here it is again. Let's see. I think there was one. There might not have been, but like it's just when you know these things, you see the pattern, and they wonder why people are calling them Nazis and fascists because it is there. Um, but thank you. I'm gonna end it here. It's been well over 2 hours, and I don't know if I can keep this video under 2 hours. Here we go again. It's so blatant, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you got a bit of a you learned a bit, and you're hopefully you will be able to recognize these this propaganda campaign that this current administration is pushing. Before I go, I want to reference the one of the most the most famous anti-propaganda um most yeah the most one of the most famous anti-Nazi anti-fascist propaganda from the then Department of War, and that was "Don't Be a Sucker." um this can we search that up? So "Don't Be a Sucker," um U.S. National Archives. You should definitely watch this video, and you've probably seen it before. You've definitely seen it before. It's the man saying, "Oh, I've heard that before." They came first. They went for the communists. I said nothing because I wasn't a communist. Then went for the trade unionists. I didn't say anything because I wasn't a trade unionist. Right? It's that video. Watch it. America did a lot of anti-Nazi propaganda during this time, and look at where we're at now. So I'm gonna leave it there. I will see you all next time. Everybody take care and be safe.